Hello, welcome to the Echo Tips podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to do a little follow-up on the topic that was discussed last week, was namely custom alarm tones. So last week we addressed how you can now get custom alarm tones. Some of them are free, some of them are purchasable, and we're going to address how you might customize that and add some further details this week. But before we get into that in any kind of depth, we're going to go to a brief message about our podcast, and then we'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by the New Vision program at Goodwill. We're also grateful for the kind use of WVTF Studios. New Vision is a program of Goodwill that provides information services and assistive technology training to individuals with visual impairments living in Southwest Virginia. Goodwill Industries of the Valleys is a nonprofit organization serving the New River, Roanoke, and Shenandoah Valleys of Virginia. Goodwill's mission services help individuals with disabilities and disadvantages to get back to work and gain greater independence. These shows are provided for educational purposes. This podcast may not be retransmitted, sold, or reproduced without written permission from New Vision. Well, hello again, and welcome back to our podcast. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be dealing with the new alarm tones feature on the Amazon Echo line of devices. And last week, we kind of demonstrated that to you and just highlighted a few samples of things that you could utilize in that regard. Some of them are free, some of them are purchasable. And I had kind of mentioned last week that there was a way to locate these, and I really didn't elaborate on that too much. And actually, it's buried kind of deep. So we're going to highlight this week about where you go and the purchasing mechanism and some of that kind of stuff. But before I get into that, I'd like to welcome back our returning listeners. We really appreciate your listenership. If you ever have any questions or subjects maybe you'd like to see the podcast address connected with the Echo, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or Facebook at Goodwill Valleys. That's Goodwill Industries of the Valleys. And we'd be happy to take up that, hear your feedback and what you think might be beneficial to hear in the future. For our returning listeners, our new listeners, let me get that right, I'd like to welcome you. What is this podcast all about? Well, we're just little tiny nuggetized episodes dealing with features on the Amazon Echo. Typically, we try to address some new things or new ways to approach things, maybe new devices, things like that. And there's constantly a rolling Rolodex of new items coming out every month on the Amazon blog. But also at times, we delve into our archives, something that I feel is really beneficial maybe to our listeners, and we pull that out and maybe dust it off, retackle it, and often we'll find little tweaks and new things that maybe the feature has expanded over time. Something that I tried 2 years ago, didn't work, but now works. So we do that from time to time as well. And we try to keep our episodes between 5 to 15 minutes long, something like that. Okay, so let's delve right into our material for today. So as you heard last week, I demonstrated the alarm tones customization. I did it verbally by asking the A-Lady to set a wake-up alarm. Well, I tried several different things. I originally tried Jurassic World, which was a purchasable tone, and I couldn't get it to seem to work. Later, since then, I've been able to get it to work. I also did the SpongeBob SquarePants, which was free, and that seemed to work just fine. So how do you find these new tones, this store of sorts, for the ones that are, well, some are free and some are paid for? And it looks like, based on what I was reading on the Amazon blog, if they are paid for, they start pretty much at $1.99. And I would imagine a lot of them are already kind of set that way. Okay, so where do you find this feature? Well, before I'd say the magic word, if you do have an Amazon Echo in listening distance of me, you may want to shut its ears off because I don't want to trigger your Echo at home, especially maybe prompting you to make a purchase or something here, weird in a bit. But I'll just give you a second to do that. Now, if you're listening on your Amazon Echo to this podcast, you should be just fine. But if you have another one maybe in listening distance and you think it might hear its name, you might want to get up and shut its ears off. Okay, so hopefully I gave you a little bit to do that. If you ever need to, you can pause the podcast and come back and resume. Okay, so let's delve right into this. Where do you find these custom tone features? Well, it is not the simplest thing in the world. I hope that it will eventually manifest itself on the primary Amazon store, kind of like Skills did at one point. I think it was me and maybe some other listeners or users of the Echoes reached out to Amazon at one point and said, you can't even find the Skills. It would be nice to be able to direct people to the Skills without them even having an Amazon Echo yet. And so they integrated that in the primary store. I don't know if you ever noticed that. If you go to Amazon.com, in addition to being able to search for groceries and wet wipes and everything else, you can actually change the filter to Alexa Skills. So you can do that now. And I hope these tones will either show up in that same kind of manner or maybe under that same category, just earmarked alarm tones or something like that. Anyway, so to find them, you have to do this on the Alexa app. That means it has to be on an iPhone, Android device, or Fire tablet. You cannot do this through the Amazon portal. At least I haven't discerned that yet. I looked and it wasn't there. So you have to do it on an app, okay? Now, it probably, if you have a Fire tablet or an Android app, it would be the better way to go. And I'm going to explain that here in a second because I use iOS or Apple devices. And you'll see the downside of that here in just a second. So anyway, you open up that app on your tablet or smartphone. You tap in the bottom right corner to go to your setting or your slide out for more information. That slides out, gives you a long list. Now, typically in times past, we go down to settings, but there's a lot of other things on that page. You have I think reminders and skills. This is where you can get to the skills search store. Anyway, you want to tap on something called alarms and timers. It's kind of counterintuitive. I originally looked for this feature by going to settings and then going to each device and going to sounds, and I couldn't really surface it. Well, actually, I could surface some parts of it, but I think this is probably the preferred method, and this is the way described, I think, by Amazon. So anyway, you go to alarms and timers, and from there, you have a list of all your alarms, whether they're active or not, and I guess some of them fall off the end of the list at some point. You have several tabs there. You have alarms, timers. I don't think in the app reminders are listed there. I think that's in a separate category. It's a little confusing because the web portal is a little different. But down near the bottom of the app page, right above where you have the little tabs for home and communication, there's a bar across the bottom that says settings. You want to tap on settings. It is kind of a weird UI interface. So tap on settings. I mean, typically you think of a gear or something in one of the corners or something. It's a little bar across the bottom. Okay, now once you do that, you got to choose the Echo that you want to customize. Because remember, each Echo can have different types of alarms, different volumes. And that kind of makes sense. You may want the alarm on your Echo in your kitchen to be different than the alarm in your bedroom, right? So you want to choose your Echo. Now, despite that, I wish they had some sort of global option, but I guess it makes sense. So you choose your Echo. Now, in my case, I had an Amazon Echo Dot, so I selected that. Now, on the very next page, this is where it gets interesting. You have all those sound options, and the typical thing like volume and would you like the alarm to come on gradually. What you want to do is look under the heading that says default, and then you want to tap on the sound that's listed right below there. They usually say sound nibble or sound simple alarm, whatever your current alarm is set to. You tap on that button. It's right below the default sounds heading. Then that brings you into, finally, we have got where we needed to go, which is where you have the sound selections. Now, historically, you had, as I described last week, all your traditional jingles and stuff you've had for years. Now, additionally, on the tab that you usually open up to default, you are set to My Tones. Now, if you skim down through there, you'll not only see the ones we've had for like however many years, 4 or 5 years, you'll also see the celebrity tones. You'll also see, if you had followed my directions last week, any, I think, proprietary custom tones that you verbally invoked. They're kind of like now earmarked under your My Tone section. The other kind of interesting thing I noticed there is you can also have certain playlists or designations that you've used in the past. So like, for example, at home, I would sometimes set up a wake up alarm to Dave's wake up playlist or something like that. So I actually even saw that listed under My Tones. It's kind of like previously used invocations connected with alarms. But the thing we want that's brand new is you want to hit the tab at the top that switches it from My Tones to Custom Tones. And it might just say Custom, and you hit that. And then you have a listing. Now, on an Apple device like an iPhone or iPad, you're going to have a little disclaimer at the top that says you cannot purchase tones from in this app. Okay? But it gives a whole listing of things you can verbally walk over to your Echo to invoke one of these new alarms, and even to purchase one of these new alarms if they do have a cost associated with them. And I'm going to give you some examples of what was listed there. Now, immediately, a light bulb went off in my brain. I realized why this is. On Apple devices, Apple likes to collect like a 30% charge on everything under the sun in their store or anything associated with apps in their store, and why these companies can't work out some sort of deal where they just kind of greenlight each other and don't charge each other 30%. I'll never know, and just allow them to compete on the sake of competing on services and and stuff. But anyway, nonetheless, you can't make the purchase on an Apple device, but you can still verbally make that purchase. So if you are on an Android device or a Fire tablet, I'm sure right there you would have a beautiful, nice, luscious listing of all the tones and probably their associated prices, and you could just make the purchase right then and there, which I think sounds so much easier. But unfortunately, you don't have that option on the Apple devices. Okay, with that in mind, here is a listing that was on my app of some of the things that you could purchase or were free. I don't know exactly which ones costed money and which ones didn't. So I'm going to give you a whole listing of, and like I said, once you know the name of the thing, you can walk over to your Echo and verbally invoke it. And plus, once you make the change inside the app, I think that sets it, just like it would with celebrity tones or whatever, that just sets it as your default alarm type. So you could do that there, and that way you don't have to verbally choose it all the time. It just you just say, hey, wake me up at 7 a.m. tomorrow, and it just automatically plays the jingle that you've selected. So that's always an option as well. Okay, so if you do this and you haven't purchased the tone, it will give you a prompt to do so. And if you have an associated PIN code, you'll probably need to say that out loud to make the purchase. And like I said, the first time I tried this with Jurassic World, it didn't work exactly right, or wasn't able to play it right away. It took a little bit of time, but later that afternoon I was able to utilize it. Okay, so here's a few of them. You can say, hey lady, wake me up to loud buzzer alarm tone. So that's kind of the syntax here. They all end with the phrase alarm tone. And I imagine that's because if you didn't do that, it's going to try and do a keyword search against maybe your music library, especially if you had Amazon Unlimited Music. And there's very likely an album out there with Loud Buzzer song title, or an artist called Loud Buzzer or something like that. So you need to add that extra verbiage or nomenclature to the end, which is wake me up to loud buzzer alarm. Here's another one, sounds of nature, backyard animals gold. So I tried that one. I heard a horse. Premium ocean sounds, water sounds, Disney characters, musical elements, minions, premium bird sounds, nature sounds. And like I said, all of these would end with alarm tone if you were verbally trying to invoke it. Otherwise, if you're on the app, you can just scroll down through the list, select it, purchase it if need be, and then from then on it'll act as your default tone on that particular Echo that you've set it to. So anyway, that's just a brief sum up of this new customizable alarm tones feature and where you go to find the freebies and the ones that you can purchase. Okay, well, that kind of brings this episode to a close. We thank you for listening. If you're more interested in finding out about what I'm doing at the New Vision program at Goodwill, you're welcome to check me out at goodwillvalleys.com/newvision, all lowercase, no spaces. And you're also welcome, like I said, to reach out to us on Twitter or Facebook. We appreciate your, and we really encourage you, if you can, to subscribe. That way you don't miss any episodes. And that also helps us get a much more level idea for what our numbers are and what episodes you guys are really interested in as well. All right, well, until next time, it's time to turn your microphone back on your Echo, start practicing some of the many things that you've learned, and we thank you for listening.
Thanks, Dave. In conclusion, let me tell you a thing or two. This episode is brought to you by New Vision at Goodwill Industries of the Valleys, and it is also made possible in part by a grant from Community Foundation serving Western Virginia. And there's more. We're also grateful for the kind use of WVTF Studios. New Vision is a program of Goodwill that provides information services and assistive technology training to individuals with visual impairments living in Southwest Virginia. For more information, check out our website at goodwillvalleys.com/newvision. with no spaces. Goodwill Industries of the Valleys is a nonprofit organization serving the New River, Roanoke, and Shenandoah Valleys of Virginia. Goodwill's mission programs help individuals with disabilities and disadvantages to get back to work and gain greater independence. These shows are provided for educational purposes. This podcast may not be retransmitted, sold, or reproduced without written permission from New Vision. Thanks for listening.